Okay, so it's 11:03. I think in 1 minute we will get started. Got some people here. Thank you, John, for letting people in. So welcome to our community of practice. And the topic today that we are covering is everything RSI and FTES, kind of funding these apprenticeship pathways. And we have a panel of experts that will be helping us. So let's get started, and thank you everyone for being here. And we have about 20 more people that have RSVP'd, so 30 more. So we're going to probably get some folks jumping on during the session. Let me advance here. So while we're waiting, please introduce yourself in the chat with your affiliation. And so everyone kind of knows who's here. So name, we have a number of folks from county offices of ed and school districts, as well as community college. So name and affiliation, please. Thank you, and we are recording. Okay, I can't really see everyone that's here, but for everyone that's here, good to see you all. Thank you for entering your name and affiliation in the chat, and we'll be getting started. Okay, 11:05. Let's get started. Introduce yourself, name and affiliation in the chat for those who have just joined, and here's our quick agenda. We have some announcements and updates. We will be introducing our panel. We're doing an overview of RSI and FTES and the use of RSI in a non-traditional setting for apprenticeships. We're setting the stage. We're going to hear from our key contacts in the state around this issue, have our panel, and we should have time for some questions. Okay? And again, for those of you who just joined, please introduce yourself in the chat. So, of the quick announcements, I want to just announce and say thank you to those of you who participated in Teach for the Bay. That was our virtual student-facing conference earlier this month. And we had over 1,100 attendees attending workshops on how to become a teacher at all levels. And we had an amazing advisory committee with our community college and county office partners. So thank you so much. If you were a participant, we appreciate you. And our students appreciate you. And on the website here, on this page, we have posted many of our workshops, the recordings. So folks, you can all show them as needed. And it's posted on the web, both the recordings and the PowerPoints. So again, thank you so much to our participating colleges. It was really a Bay Region effort. And thank you to Tracy Burt, the coordinator, who worked day and night on this. So also just in this PowerPoint, we just have where to find information. All of our recordings for this regional joint venture, we are funded by BACCC to provide information on apprenticeships and pathways and programs in the education and ECE sector. So our information, both our centers of excellence data, as well as our recordings and minutes, are all found on the BACCC website. So just a reminder that you can go back and take a look. And here's Don Daves, who will also be part of our panel. So in terms of welcome and setting the stage, I will tell you that we have in this sector, we're probably, if not we are one of the fastest growing non-traditional apprenticeships, most certainly in our region, in the San Francisco Bay region, but statewide, when I look at all the new CAI awards and talk to folks, we've really been booming in the past couple years. So many new pathways. We actually have 29 active pathways in planning or implementation or full operations in the San Francisco Bay region would be classified as ECE and EDU. And in this non-traditional space, making sure that we can fund the courses that we're offering and fund it with the best choices for everyone's colleges and students is, has been an ongoing question. So the issue of RSI and FTES has bubbled forth from the field, really wanting some clarification about when to do what, how to do what, how to get more RSI, how to get more funding. And in our field, an issue that has come up is all of you who are in this space know that it's not just our CTE courses that we need here. If we're preparing teachers at all levels, they also need general ed. So marrying an apprenticeship pathway that includes some general ed courses is a little different than some of our traditional apprenticeships. And the other non-traditional thing is that our students are not all in the same place. They can't always be cohorted. And so, knowing that we have I would say it's a messy sector, just in my experience. Everyone's coming in at a different place, wants a different end goal, and we're trying to, serve them through apprenticeship. So, and some of the questions have to do with RSI, FTES funding. How do they impact what's called the non-traditional apprenticeship and the growth of this sector? So, we're going to go forward, and I'm going to introduce you to John Dunn, who's going to cover some of these key points. And John, you can tell me when you want me to advance the slide.
Okay. Hi, everybody. I'm John Dunn. I'm looking at the list. Most of you've met me. I'm the Regional Director of Apprenticeship for the Bay Region. But kind of more importantly, maybe to this conversation, I was a high school teacher for 10 years. And a lot of you've already heard me say that this particular area is one I want to see a lot more apprenticeships in before I retire. So hustle up. Let's get this moving and let us know what we can do to help smooth out some of the barriers that we might bump into. So go ahead and go to the next screen. I'm going to do some of the boring stuff. Sabrina's here from the Chancellor's office, and we're all super excited to hear from her because she's new and we needed a new face after Sean left. So that's good. But I'll do some of the boring stuff. So go ahead and go to the next one. There we go. I've been hanging around RSI since 2008. So when I got out of the classroom and went to the Department of Ed, they dropped this in my lap. And back in the good old days or bad old days, depending on how you look at it, that was in the middle of a recession. The Department of Ed had a chunk of the RSI funding, and so did the Chancellor's office. And we just kind of did our own thing. A nice person, his name is Barry Noonan. Some of you may remember Barry at the Chancellor's office. He handled that over at the Chancellor's office. And sometime around, I think it's 2012, 13, I think, when the governor's office the budget combined these two chunks of money when adult education came over to the Chancellor's office and things like that. So if you've been around a while, that's why it's all sitting at the Chancellor's office in two schedules, Schedule 2 and 3, I think. I don't want to remember that as much as I did before. So that's what it's there for. It's related in supplemental instruction. It's a reimbursement. Once upon a time, there was no extra funding, like it says here. This thing behind me is my grandfather's apprenticeship completion certificate from 1927. So there was really no RSI back then. But my other grandfather apparently went to an adult school to be a pipe fitter. So in the olden days, that's how this got done. So that's kind of why the LEA thing is in labor code, we think. Nobody's around to tell us. Later on, an assembly member, Senator Montoya, put some money into the budget. But so if you hear Montoya fundings from some folks in the building trades or firefighters, that's why it's there. That's why it's called that. We all call it RSI funding now. So most of that, as Sabrina can tell you, goes to the building trades and firefighters, with a few other scattered smaller programs picking up some RSI. In 2008, it was about $5 an hour, and it was different on the Chancellor's office and CDE side, which made no sense whatsoever. But that changed rapidly after that. And now it pretty much does match. If you take FTES and break it into hours, which is not easy to do, it's roughly about the same in terms of funding strength for RSI compared to FTES. Because back when it wasn't, a lot of schools were not interested in creating apprenticeship programs if they had to use RSI funding because it would cost them money. And then the last one is very important to your fiscal people. The chancellor's office and other folks changed the ed code to clarify that colleges could use one or the other, not both. That's super important. Don't use both, you're going to go to jail. We had a couple people do that in 2007, I believe, in an unnamed adult school in Los Angeles County. So don't do that. Sabrina will tell you how to make sure that that doesn't happen. But that's kind of how this all became what it is today, where we can actually have these cool conversations and potentially maybe somehow pick up some extra funding. As the funding rate goes up, that just helps with the funding rate. It does not add hours. That's an important piece of this puzzle that we can get into later. So, okay, next slide. Here's a quick look at the Bay region. I pulled this off of the most recent memo and the web page. Those are the links. After I stop talking, I will actually drop the links to those pages in so that you can not bother Sabrina. You can go read for yourself these things and then email her. But those are important web pages to have. These are the hours and the dollars in the region for the community colleges. If you want to see the CVE K-12 LEAs, go check out the memo. I didn't have room to put everybody in there. But this is kind of gives you an idea of what's out there. Obviously, Chabot and Foothill are the big folks in here. Almost all of these dollars are in the building trades. None of them will be in the firefighters on our side of the house. So just gives you an idea of the kind of money that is in the region and scattered around. Okay, next slide. And there's our statewide allocation for community colleges and K-12. There's a big difference, as you can see, but that's indicative of history and how this has grown over the years. A lot of that is because the firefighters have all their hours on the CDE side, but also that's just how it kind of grew over the years. Later on, we won't talk about it here because we're going to talk education, but those are K-12 apprentices that don't get college credit, if you think about it that way. So that's an important consideration in the future about that group of apprentices that are many times doing the same thing as the apprentices on the community college side. So I'm going to look at my list. We'll leave it on this one because I didn't have another one. We don't use these much in non-traditional apprenticeships, like I said. Just because it's just they weren't being used many years ago. There are barber and cosmetology programs that use them, but generally it's a pretty small slice. I think this is an opportunity maybe to increase that slice though in the future. So almost all of the RSI hours are connected to a labor union in some way that runs the training program. Although in California, the Associated Building Contractors, our ABC has non-union apprenticeships in the building trades. WICA is an electrician apprenticeship program also. And a few Associated General Contractors of San Diego pick up some RSI hours for non-union programs. But for the most part, it's in California, these are labor union building trades programs that get the money. So that's about it for me.
Thank
I'm
you,
looking at my
John.
list. I'm good.
No, thank you.
I'll let you go.
That's great. And it gives us, I wanted you to do the historical perspective. And I think it illustrates we're breaking in with these new non-traditionals, we're breaking into a historical system of how funding is allocated. So some of the difficulties people are having understanding this, it makes sense. This is complicated and it's also been around for a while in other industries. And we're a new non-traditional pathway, and that makes sense. So, getting more RSI dollars for non-traditional apprenticeships should be a goal. John and I are going to work on that together, right, John? And also helping to clarify kind of the process for non-traditional programs to go through. So, thank you. And John will be here, so save your questions, or if you could put something in the chat, we'll go back to looking at the chat later. And I'm going to introduce our next speaker. Also, if you have just hopped on, please introduce yourself in the chat. So I'd like to introduce Don Daves Rougeau, Senior Advisor to the Chancellor at the Community College Chancellor's Office, and he's going to give us a brief overview. So Don.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Apologies, I'm a little under the weather today, so
Oh,
my voice is a
sorry.
little scratchy. Please forgive me, but I just want to just share a few words from the perspective of the Chancellor's office and the Chancellor, whose Vision 2030 is really our guidepost for driving the work across our system, and then allow us to really jump into deeper conversations with the experts in the room on this particular conversation. As you all know, Vision 2030 is a really ambitious and agenda for us as a system, and it's grounded in what we are describing as our demonstration projects. Demonstration projects are essentially when we identify best practices in the field that are happening at a few colleges and locations, either regionally or across the state. We want to bring those practitioners together to figure out what the blueprint will be to allow us to scale those best practices across the system. And I think there's tremendous amount of opportunity in the ECE education sector. I think it's very complicated because there's so many players and actors in the space, and how do we bring all those folks to the table to get an aligned approach? But the work that's been coming out of the Bay Area as well as other um, ECE local efforts really show great potential. And I think what's most important for us at this point is, from the Chancellor's Office perspective for Vision 2030, is how do we find some very quick wins in this space, which can be challenging given just some of the things that John was talking about related to RSI and financial support. But I would challenge you to think about that as we move this work forward. What are the quick wins that we can bring to the table for the Chancellor to bring to the Board of Governors, and then we can use those quick wins to provide the justification for bringing in additional resources and support to this work, which is incredibly valuable for families and communities, particularly women of color, across our state. So we'll leave it at that for now.
Thank you. Thank you for bringing that perspective to our group, Don.
Sure.
And if anyone has specific questions, you can put them in the chat. We'll revisit the chat later. Thank you so much, Don.
Sure.
Okay, and
And I was a former teacher
oh,
myself, so I'm
yeah.
very, very connected. K-12. Well, I started in Fresno High School, so I'm very connected to this sector, as was my grandparents. So yeah.
Thank you. Yep. We've got a lot of that passion here on this panel, former teachers. Okay, I'd like to thank you, Don, and I'd like to welcome Justin Susi from Launch Network. And Launch is now doing some work. It's housed at the foundation in Sacramento, Community College Foundation. They're now doing some work with our San Francisco Bay region, intermediary and technical assistance support. So I would like to welcome him. And Justin, you can just tell me when to move slides, and I'll give you a 1-minute warning if we get there. Okay? So
Awesome.
thank you.
Thank you, Kathleen. If we could please go to the next slide. And so, hey everyone, my name is Justin. I'm from Launch. I'm the associate director that leads our higher ed partnerships, and currently in the region, leading the programmatic sponsorship and compliance for 3 colleges with Kathleen. So that's San Jose City College, Hartnell College, and Cabrillo College are all implementing now DAS approved EDU apprenticeship for teacher aid.
Approved.
Awesome. Next slide, Kathleen. Awesome. So what I really wanted to talk about today was the Ed Code and the framework for tuition waivers. So if you were back in this space in apprenticeship around 2018, I did archive a memorandum from 2020. But under Education Code 76300, community colleges now have the authority to waive fees for students enrolled in apprenticeship programs. And this is extremely crucial, as John built on, because it creates accessibility and affordability for all eligible students trying to access the inroads to apprenticeship programs that are being implemented in the new and innovative space. And so what this really did, it put new and innovative RAPs almost in the same lens as the traditional trades in terms of RSI and funding. In terms of impact, right, by removing tuition barriers, colleges are now able to attract a wider pool of candidates and incumbent workers transitioning as apprentices. Currently, right now, the population of traditional apprentices is huge, right? And so really thinking about new and innovative programs, fostering inclusion into the workforce development space through the different programs that we have is extremely important, especially with Vision 2030, 500,000 apprentices in the Earn as You Learn model. In terms of who qualifies for the fee waivers, in order to access this benefit, individuals must be enrolled in a state-approved apprenticeship program or registered into the CAS system or the California Apprenticeship System through DAS and comply with the community college regulations that are set forth by their APs and BPs. One thing that I do want to say is there are multiple avenues of waiving fees, which we'll discuss those today, but ultimately it is a fee waiver, which means that we need to take steps in order to access reimbursement. Next slide, please, Kathleen. So the first one is the most used out right now in the new and innovative space, and that is apportionment, right? So funding for apprenticeship education comes from the apportionment allocation set in the state's general budget. And so basically, this is how it works. The college, in order to tap into apportionment, generally should not be under unfunded FTES status or basic aid status to tap into the 320 reporting system. For the college, what that really means is that if you are eligible, it creates a net zero difference and the state reimburses the cost of tuition free instruction. Think about how colleges or students are utilizing the College Promise Grant. It is almost the same equivalent when we're thinking about apportionment and reimbursement on an institution-wide scale. Because now, if a student is utilizing or participating in a DAS apprenticeship program, those credit courses can be included in the FTES calculation. What this process does allow is that instruction without tuition costs, again, eliminating financial barriers, increasing enrollment, and making these programs financially viable. As we know, finances is one of the biggest hurdles for completing an education pathway. In terms of reporting, colleges report apportionment on the CCCCO 320 report form, and we need to make sure that we're doing proper tracking of the students. So coding apprentices, internal flagging, creation of courses on the back end is extremely important in terms of tracking student contact hours and thinking about that break-even analysis to ensure a net zero loss to the college when implementing an RAP. Next slide, please, Kathleen. And so the next one is related and supplemental instruction. So it is another key resource that is used based off reported hours from the previous year. In terms of usage, just in terms of technicalities, RSI funds are specifically for the instruction of registered apprentices and can be especially helpful in situations that involve colleges being in unfunded FTES or basic aid status. There's already one that I'm working with that falls under basic aid status. And across the region, we're identifying through enrollment trends, colleges that are falling into unfunded FTE status as well. Some caveats, though, is that funding only supports closed apprenticeship sections as it currently exists, and they're no longer eligible if you're utilizing RSI to be eligible for the FTES reporting cycle. John did mention you can only use one or the other. So that can be seen as a liability to the college because that section or that sequence now becomes self-sustaining. So you have to think about it in that lens. For reimbursement, it is also different. On the 320 report, in the for credit bearing side, it is through census. Non-credit side, it is through positive attendance through 320. But for RSI, colleges must maintain positive attendance records and tracking of student hours. Daily and unduplicated headcounts have to be included in that. And then the LEAs report through the NOVA reporting system portal. And that, in my time, was about 3 times per year. And so that's something to think about as well because you're utilizing a different system. If a college doesn't have RSI allocation, I know Dr. Aguilar is in the room today, so I'm not going to steal her thunder, but there are certain ways to access or actually request if funds are available. and I'll leave that for Dr. Aguilar. But one of the benefits is departments applying for RSI and they receive allocation, or if they were, reimbursement does not go back to the general fund. Rather, it goes back to the division or department that actually filed for it, which allows for sustaining of programs. And so prior to my role here at Launch, I was the administrator for apprenticeship programs at a community colleges for a community college in another region, which actually fell into unfunded FTE status. And so through that calculation, yeah, sorry about that, John Dunn. Through that calculation, if you're able to sustain 30 students, at least in terms of the registered apprenticeship program that I was leading, 30 students a year, which were taking 4 credit bearing courses, the instructional revenue in terms of RSI reimbursement would have been $150,000, sustaining the director position, sustaining instructional salaries, and all fixed and variable costs. So that's also one thing that we want to think about in terms of strategic enrollment management if we were to apply for RSI. Next slide, Kathleen. So tuition waivers and residency. This question does come up quite a bit. And so per ed code 76350, non-residents can actually have their fees waived. We think about this all the time with students who are international students. For example, PCC is one of the largest in regards to international students with J1, F1 visas. And per ed code, we waive their fees if they go into a registered apprenticeship program. However, one thing to think about is generally non-resident tuition is not covered through the apportionment pathway or FTES. So a college taking on apprentices needs to be very strategic in regards to how they're going to reimburse that, especially with the different formulated funding costs when supporting non-resident students. Next slide, Kathleen. And then other fees beyond units. So the education code 76355, as we know, there is tuition fees, as well as other fees associated to a student's cost of attendance at a community college. This also includes the health center fee, student representation fee, other support components that each college differs but has. And so through the ed code, if they're apprentice, the college can waive that fee. However, through that same lens, the college can also determine whether or not that waiving a fee means that they can access those resources or not. So with these ed codes, every college has an AP and BP associated to that crosswalk of how they want to implement. And I would say when you're navigating financials, make sure that you review that with the appropriate administrators to ensure that you are in compliance with how your particular district institutionalize and implements these ed codes. Next slide, Kathleen. And then the last one is these. So outside of apportionment, outside of RSI, thinking about apportionment, it's a little bit more difficult to braid funding sources, but as we see across the state, there are CAI grants, there's COI grants, there's DOL, philanthropic, there's HRTP grants, HRCC grants, which are all built to kickstart apprenticeship programs. Also SWP for the not-for-credit courses, where we use those courses as a sandbox or customize rapid training to meet industry demands. These can all be leveraged to support registered apprenticeship programs outside of apportionment and RSI. There's also contracts. If your college has a contract ed department, that's a very fast and dynamic way to create partnerships and build critical skill sets for particular sectors. And then I did also incorporate that link where we see apprenticeship specific funding, adjacent funding, and possible funding. So those are some trends that the colleges are utilizing and how to report those. And with that, I'll pass it off to the next speaker.
Thank you, Justin. That was a quick condensation of all your slides. Very, very succinct. I want to add 2 things to it. That one is that when you're talking about fees being paid for, that does not, just a reminder, many of you know this, but it doesn't preclude a student from applying for and receiving financial aid, because financial aid is in addition to, they may have their fees covered, but there are many more expenses that are in addition to fees where a student may fill the FAFSA out and still be eligible for financial aid. So they should be encouraged to apply. And obviously their fees wouldn't be covered, but all those other expenses, the living expenses of many of your apprentices would be part of that financial aid package if they're eligible. And then as we move forward, we also have some county offices of ed on here who are interested in applying for RSI, some high school districts. So we can put that in the chat and maybe talk more about the slide that John showed for eligibility. So, okay. So next I would like to introduce Sabrina Aguilar, and she's from the Chancellor's office. She's our new apprenticeship specialist. And I'll introduce her as having coordinated apprenticeship programs in Southern California. So she has experience in that. And I'm happy to have her here. And she'll be covering some of these items. So Sabrina.
Hello, good morning, everybody. I am Sabrina Aguilar. I'm the new apprenticeship program lead for the California Community College's Chancellor's Office. I've been with the Chancellor's Office for just, actually today is my 1 month anniversary, but definitely I understand the perspective that you all have, boots on the ground in administering apprenticeship programs. I did serve as the apprenticeship program director at a California Community College for several years, and certainly it is a heavy lift for apprenticeship programs. And so I applaud you all for the work that you're doing. And of course, just know that the work is certainly worthwhile and impactful to the students and the overall workforce throughout the state of California. So I'm excited to be part of this conversation and contribute to this life-changing work. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. So I'll start off with an overview of our California Apprenticeship Initiative at the State Chancellor's Office, or CHI grant funding for short. And I'll give an overview of some of the grants that we've funded so far. So during the 2023-24 fiscal year, the State Chancellor's Office has funded 79 new applications for a total of $37 million. And we've divided funding into 4 different sectors. So there is a planning phase for colleges that really want to use the 1-year grant duration to set the foundation for their programs. Perhaps they want to work with starting partnerships with industry partners, employers, work on curriculum, getting program standards developed and submitted. So that's really setting the stage for beginning to implement your apprenticeship program. The second phase is the pre-apprenticeship implementation, which works cohesively with the apprenticeship implementation grant. So those two are really, some individuals, we've seen colleges go straight to the implementation. They use that 3-year time frame to start the planning and start registering apprentices. Other colleges and educational institutions go through the planning grant before moving straight to the implementation. But either way, they are wonderful opportunities to really get the groundwork set up for your apprenticeship program and then begin registering apprentices under both the DOL, United States Department of Labor, and the California Division of Apprenticeship Standards. And then the last funding sector that we have is the expansion grant. So this is really targeting apprenticeship programs that have already been created and implemented, and we really want to help sustain the growth for the apprenticeship expansion opportunity. Next slide, please. And then further, for the fiscal year 2024-25 allocation, we have funded 37 applications for a total of $19 million. We did not fund any expansion grants during this time. However, as we're seeing more and more apprenticeship opportunities be developed throughout the state of California, we anticipate that there will be additional funds and applications specific to the expansion opportunity that we have at the California Community College Chancellor's Office. Next slide, please. So some of the outcomes that CHI has brought, so far the investment has led to the formation of 37 new apprenticeship programs, enrolling 864 apprentices in total. Given the amount of time that it takes to set up curriculum, receive approval, and all the things that we mentioned in the early planning stages of an apprenticeship program, we anticipate that this number of apprentices and apprenticeship programs that have been fully set up will continue to grow as well. We are also seeing, as I mentioned, the trend of moving from the planning to the implementation phase. which is a successful progression trend for using grant dollars as well. And then as far as an upcoming CHI RFA on the horizon, we don't have one anticipated for this current calendar year. However, we anticipate that there will be another RFA for California Apprenticeship Initiative that will be released sometime next year. We haven't determined the exact details on that yet, but please stay tuned as we do have some more information that will be released from the Chancellor's office in regards to the next RFA. Next slide, please. So shifting gears a little bit to related and supplemental instruction or RSI funding allocated during the 2024-25 fiscal years, we have allocated $94,407,000 in total, $34,690,000 of which will be allocated to California Community College districts, and of course the LEA on the K-12 side has been allocated $59,717,000. We are excited to see that there has been an increase from the previous fiscal year of $966,000. As mentioned, the reimbursement rate has also increased to $10.05 per hour. We're seeing steady trends of increasing that reimbursement rate, so we're excited to support that ongoing growth as well, because the previous fiscal year was listed at $998. So historically, we are seeing that upwards trend, and we're excited to see that continue. Next slide, please. So for some of the RSI outcomes, just to give a background on that, there were, for recal hours, according to NOVA, of course, as mentioned, we do want to ensure that you are reporting appropriately in NOVA, whether that be RSI or FTES. We have seen a significant number of instructional hours during the 22-23 recal period, with the RSI hours of 9,636,000, just over that amount, and then FTES hours, which are a little bit less common than the RSI reporting, being at 88,185 hours. Comparing the previous periods from P2, looking at fiscal year 2023-24, we have seen an increase of about 500,000 hours, and we're seeing an increase of the number of apprentices instructed to about 20,000 apprentices. So we're excited to see the growth continue, and we just want to support you all to ensure that that continues as well. Next slide, please. So to give a little overview of the RSI funding conditions, there are only two entities which are available to receive our RSI funding, which is the K-12 LEAs and the California Community Colleges. Again, the way it works is that the RSI hours are inputted into the NOVA platform based on schedules. There's an initial projection period, period 1, period 2, and then a recal period. If you all have a program that is new and you want to get that included into the RSI portion where there's a drop-down menu and you could record some of those hours, we ask that you please provide verification of DAS program approval to apprenticeship@cccco.edu. And then, of course, we will work with our Dean of Instruction over apprenticeship to determine, based on where we are with the reporting period, the next steps for you to ensure that you do receive hours to sustain your new apprenticeship program growth. And then also, if you have any questions on setting up apprenticeship programs, please, by all means, feel free to reach out to that email address. We're happy to connect with you individually, have a meeting, and help guide you throughout the process. And then last thing I wanted to mention is the utilization of RSI funding for traditional and non-traditional sectors. As it was mentioned, primarily we've seen traditional sectors utilize the RSI funding, but certainly we have had educational institutions in the non-traditional sector utilize the RSI funding as well. And so that's certainly a possibility as long as the hours are accounted for within the NOVA system. Next slide, please. Again, thank you so much. We're happy to support this amazing opportunity and growth for all of the field. Thank you.
Thank you, Sabrina. And before we go to our next speaker, can I just ask just a clarifying question that, from your opinion, we do have a need for more RSI allocations, correct? I mean, it
Yes.
run out.
Yes, absolutely. And we've been working very closely with our entire apprenticeship team here at the Chancellor's Office for long-term sustainability and growth. Again, this is an exciting problem to have, that we have so many apprenticeship opportunities emerging And so we're working very closely with data-informed practices and sustainable operations so that we could advocate for increased funding as well. Because the dollars do run out. And so we are working to increase that allocation.
Okay, great. Thank you. I just wanted to clarify because even though there are colleges and county offices that may apply, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's an endless supply. So we also have to do advocacy to ensure that, especially for our non-traditional apprenticeships, that there's additional dollars allocated. So thank you, Sabrina. Thank you so much. Okay, and I'd like to introduce Michael Kane, who's Dean at Skyline College, and he is in what's called a basic aid district. And I've listed what I think are the basic aid districts, and I could be wrong. So anyway, we have quite a few here in the San Francisco Bay region. And he's going to just tell you a little bit about the challenges and opportunities of being in a basic aid district and what he's done to support his apprenticeships that are non-traditional, especially, and what work he's done. So, Michael, take it away, and I'll advance any slide for you, or we can pause on this slide.
All right, thank you, Kathleen. This is the only slide I've got. So I'm going to actually go in reverse on the slides.
Okay.
Because basically being in a basic aid district, there aren't a lot of challenges. We are very fortunate to be in basic aid districts. It means our overall funding for the college is very stable. And it's a much better situation in many ways than it is being on apportionment. So from that perspective, there aren't a lot of challenges. There are a lot of opportunities and strategies, though, and I think the strategies really tie across to all colleges, whether they're apportionment or basic aid, which is the fact that one of the reasons we're having this meeting is that RSI is not very well understood necessarily on everyone's campus or in everyone's district. So one of the things that I think I've been pushing Tony Cordova at the Chancellor's office, and we've talked about it in a couple meetings, about the possibility of getting our business officers and deans involved in a meeting similar to this one to really talk about that mechanism so there's a better understanding. Because in my district, pretty much every year when the reportings, each of the quarterly reportings come in, I get a Zoom request from my district office business office so I can walk them through it. And that really should be happening the other way around, right? So Justin, anytime you want to come over to our district, we'll bring you over, buddy. I think the real issue is really making sure that the administrative side understands exactly how RSI works. And one of the things that I'll be doing, and I recommend other folks do, is actually sharing the slides out and the recording out from this meeting to your business offices, both at your college and your district. I think it's really good, would be really good for some of them to see actually the Title V sections that they're under and some of the processes. I think it's really important. One of the things that we bounced into is something Sabrina just mentioned. When our ECE apprenticeship first started, I already administer an automotive apprenticeship. When we went to do our first quarterly reporting, one of the things that we learned was that we actually hadn't made that step of notifying the chancellor's office so that we were in the drop-down list on the reporting. So we were looking, my business guys go, wait, which one of these is us? And I'm like, I don't think any of those are us. And so that's where we kind of learned that you have to go through and you have to make sure that your apprenticeship there. So if your business's office is having some of those issues, I think these slides would be really great for them to go over. May even be advisable to actually bring them in and have a meeting and kind of just talk through these slides and make sure everybody's on the same page so that you're really clear on how that funding's coming in, that people do understand some of the delays that happen in terms of reporting and funding and those sorts of things. One of the things that I've been really fortunate in our district is our district business personnel and understanding that some of us have been doing this longer and have more experience in coming to me. We were able to really work out and develop a process by which we have set up kind of a formula for how they distribute this. Because when you're in a multi-campus district, the funding comes into your district office and then it comes down to the campus. And so in that translation process, it may end up being just a lump sum that comes to your campus. And if you have multiple apprenticeships on your campus, you need to develop a process by which that can automatically be set up so that the RSI funding is going into the appropriate programming. So for instance, on our campus, our automotive apprenticeship has been here for 15 years. Our ECE apprenticeship has only been here for 2. So when they saw the funding amount, they assumed that the majority of that funding should go to automotive. But the reality is we run about 4 apprentices a year per semester through automotive, and we're running 20 to 30 apprentices through ECE. So in fact, that funding, so I worked with them to develop a formula based on, and showed them basically how we would calculate the apprenticeship hours and make sure they were clearly getting them. The other piece that happens, Kathleen wanted me to talk a little bit about general education courses, right? So we're all pretty adept at handling RSI in terms of our discipline-specific courses, right? Because in our traditional apprenticeships, that's really easy because that has a tendency to be pretty much what we're doing in terms of apprenticeship. With the non-traditional apprenticeships, now we're getting into more associate degree pathways and we're getting into more general education coursework. So where this all gets tied back to, and it has something, and it ties back to the fees assessments as well, is how is your college tracking apprentices, right? The holy grail is that in your management system that you have, whatever you're using, that whether it's Banner or whatever, if your student can be tagged in that system as an apprentice, then your system, there's a little checkbox in there that can say, hey, this student does not get charged tuition. Right. And then that no matter what class that student's in, that student will be protected from getting it as long as those courses are part of your approved apprenticeship plan with DAS. All right. So that is really great. Unfortunately, on my campus, we're not able to do that from the perspective of our A&R folks. I'm still arguing that. But anyways, and the fact is, so what we end up having to do is having to split sections. So for instance, for all of my automotive courses and all my ECU courses that have apprentices in them, I have split sections. So if I have a 201 in ECE, I also have a 901 section. And so if my cap is 40, I split that out. So I have 30 seats in the general section and 10 seats in the apprenticeship section. And so while that's not the most effective way for tracking and making sure that the students aren't getting charged for tuition, what that ends up forcing us to do is sending lists every semester and working off Excel spreadsheets with A&R in our business office to make sure the right students are on there so they don't get inappropriately charged. It does have an advantage when we get to the GE courses, because what it has allowed us to do in working with the other deans in the other divisions is going to those deans and saying, okay, we're going to need 4 seats in an English or a math or a geography class or a psychology class. Can you split off 4 of those seats and build us an alternative section with that course as well? And so in being able to do that, what that allows us to do then is save those seats and also make sure that we're tracking those students appropriately as apprentices in those GE classes. There is a lot of extra work in that, right? In order to have those sections, every dean out there just went, but wait, how did you go through curriculum? Right? Yes, you have to go through curriculum. You have to create those sections in curriculum. So it does add a lot of extracurricular work into it to make sure those sections are established. And for that reason, with our apprentices in ECE, we have really limited their options in terms of GEs. So instead of saying under, the IGETC or CalGETC now, I guess, you can take any of these 12 courses, we're like, no. If you're going to be part of the apprenticeship program, you're going to take one of these 3 courses or one of these 4 courses, because that saves us from having to take 12 new courses through curriculum, right? Mm-hmm. And because the discipline faculty and deans have to be involved in that process in their department, it means we're not asking for them 12 times to be involved in this process. We're asking them to be involved in it maybe once, right? So it makes it a little easier once you get the load done to basically track these things and make sure they're working. And I'll just wrap up with this. Tina Watts and I did a session at CCCCO last spring talking about these very issues. And it really rang a bell because the session was packed and we were grilled for an hour and a half afterwards. Mm-hmm. It's obvious that on each of our campuses that the RSI funding pathway and just the structural work of particularly for the non-traditional apprenticeships is foreign in some ways to our colleges and to our administrations. And so there's a lot of education work that you have to do on that side. And then the other thing, this is just a really new thing, right? So developing those strategies and working through that takes time. And what we're bumping into is, of course, all of the same things our colleges bump into, right? We're finding out there are issues with CCC Apply in the application process. There are matriculation process issues that we're feeling, right? So you suddenly end up becoming kind of a mini college on yourself, and you end up facing all of the same issues, right? How do you get a retention specialist tied to the apprenticeship? How do you get counseling hours tied to it, et cetera? So from that perspective, there's just a lot of education and a lot of process you have to go through. And I'll put my information in the chat. Feel free to reach out. I can talk to you. We've been doing this for about 2 years now. We by no means have this all worked out at any level, but we can at least tell you and talk to you about some of the things that we've been through and hopefully help you avoid some of the pitfalls that we've hit. And I saw a question pop up in the chat.
We'll do the questions after, Michael.
Yeah, well, it's an easy one, Kathleen. Let me
okay.
just cover it right here. So yeah, Regina, the split section is just splitting up the enrollment. So in other words, if it's a 40-seat section, we would have 30 seats in the standard, like ECE 201. We would have 10 seats in the apprenticeship ECE 901. And yes, it is the same exact section. If it's a face-to-face, same time, same teacher, same location, everything. The only difference is, and it does also help, is it does split up your positive attendance tracking so that you can be clear that your positive attendance tracking then, because in some classes you may not have to do positive attendance for that course normally, but for your apprenticeship section you do, so that you can make sure that you're getting the appropriate funding through RSI and those sorts of things. So it does work in that respect.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you for your comprehensive overview. Just in case we have any folks who have hopped on who don't know what Basic Aid is, it's basically a district. It could be a K-12 or a community college that is funded by property tax as opposed to other means of funding. So the property tax base is high enough to fund the educational institution. So it's a little bit different for basic aid districts, and we don't want to get into all the definitions, but it's based on higher property taxes in that area. So thank you, Michael, and we'll have time for some questions after. He mentioned also CCC Apply, and when I was at CCCAOE, the attendees were assured that the Chancellor's Office is working on improving CCC Apply, and that improvement will roll out. I think they said it's going to take about a year, looking at 2026, but there have been many folks both encouraging them to change CCC Apply, the application process, and also giving input to some of the changes. So I just wanted to share that piece of information. So thank you. And we will now hear from Ryan Jefferson, who is with DAS, and he is our new contact in this sector. And he will be talking to you about both DAS updates and AIF funding.
Awesome. Thanks a lot, Ms. Kathleen. Next slide, please. Hi, everyone. My name is Dr. Ryan K. Jefferson. I am the Strategic Business Advisor with the Division of Apprenticeship Standards, and I am also the lead advisor for our education sector. So for ECEs and EDUs, if you are interested in developing a registered apprenticeship program in the state of California, or if you have questions or you need some clarification, as far as that's concerned, I will definitely be your contact for that. For those of you out there who currently have registered apprenticeship programs, and if you need any type of modifications to your standards, or if you're adding occupations, adding employers, definitely feel free to reach out to me. I will be able to assist you in getting that information as well. So I'm really happy to be here and to support this initiative and provide you with some additional information in regards to funding as well. Next slide, Ms. Kathleen. All right, so definitely want to give a shout out to Justin over at Launch. Thank you for putting up our website earlier in your slides. As you notice, with many of the different funding opportunities that you're hearing about today, you can find these on the apprenticeship website. My primary focus today is going to be discussing apprenticeship innovation funding. and providing you at least with some information as far as that's concerned. So the Apprenticeship Innovation Funding, also affectionately known as AIF, is a funding source in the state of California as of 2022 for new and innovative apprenticeship programs. So it's primarily about the different apprenticeship programs that we're discussing today. The AIF program aims to support these new and innovative apprenticeship program sponsors, not only to sustain their particular apprenticeship programs, but also to scale their programs as well as train their apprentices. So the state has allocated over $135 million over 3 years to support ongoing cost of these programs as well as classroom training, with $55 million specifically allocated to fiscal year 2022 and 2023, and $40 million allocated for fiscal year 2023 and 2024. And the intent of this funding is to support both new as well as existing new and innovative apprenticeship programs to grow and scale and to meet the needs of more employers and create more earn and learn pathways for job seekers. And there's a couple of ways that you'll be able to access this funding. Next slide, please, Ms. Kathleen. Okay. The first one I'm going to talk to you about is going to be the Apprenticeship Innovation Funding Support, AIF-S. And the whole goal of the Apprenticeship Innovation Funding Support is to cover the cost of running an apprenticeship program, as well as aggregating the demands that the employer is going to have. This support funding can also be used for recruiting as well as supporting and placing apprentices as well. So what you see here on your slide, it gives you the primary intent, but it also shows the funding that's available. So there's $3,500 per active apprentice per year, prorated to the month, along with $1,000 per apprentice completion bonus. AIF support funds are annually and is based on the apprentices who are actively registered with DAS. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that when I talk about submissions in a couple of slides. So I want you to take a look at the right-hand side on the eligible entities. Any of those entities that you see below that has a registered apprenticeship program is going to be eligible for this type of funding. So this particular funding here is the primary intent is obviously to support the apprenticeship program and provide that additional sustainability in regards to funding is concerned. Next slide. Okay, fantastic. The next one that I want to talk to you about is the Apprenticeship Innovation Funding Training, AIF-T. The training funds under the Apprenticeship Innovation Funding supports and allows for new training programs to develop in a more agile manner, and is specifically used for training costs for the new and innovative or non-traditional or IACA programs that's available. So as you'll notice from the overview, the intent is the primary intent of these funds is to be that supplemental funding for the training of apprentices and would function alongside existing RSI funding. So when you're starting to look at braiding funds and so forth and so on, this is another opportunity here for you as well. AIF-T is specifically for training IACA apprentices, while RSI funding is more for CAC apprentices. And on this particular side, you'll also notice how the funds will be distributed. $10.05 per training hour, matched to the same as the RSI per training hour that we heard about a little bit earlier. And this is also annually based on the apprentice training hours. On the right-hand side, you'll be able to see the eligible entities that are there. The local education agency that's associated with the training of the apprentices for the program are going to be eligible. So in this context of all AIF funding, and LEA is inclusive of all public educational institutions, including all of those that you see right there on that slide. So there's definitely funding that's available to help to support the apprenticeship programs that are out there, and to assist not only in the support aspect and the actual administrative aspect of running an apprenticeship program, but there's also support out there for the training dollars as well that can assist with sustainability of the program. Next slide, please. Okay. Eligible apprentices, I talked about this a little bit earlier, apprentices that are associated with the IACA or non-traditional programs. Apprentices that were active in 2023 and placed with an employer, those guys are going to be eligible for funding in that 2024 range. And the apprentice compensation must meet the quality jobs framework, which is on the next slide. And that quality jobs framework that you see here, eligible apprentices must have a compensation package that meets the new higher standard, the ETP wage standard, that are inclusive of health benefits. So if you're looking to apply for AIF funding, and we're looking at the compensation that's in regards, we're definitely looking at the quality jobs framework. You can find this information also on the ETP website. And then you're able to identify those apprentice wages and see if your apprentices are going to be eligible based off the quality jobs framework to be able to apply for the AIF funding. Next slide, please. Okay. So here's some information in regards to submissions for reimbursement. As I mentioned, the funding is accessible to non-traditional IACA programs that do have registered apprentices with DAS. The one thing that we do want to be able to point out about AIF funding, AIF funding is a reimbursement model and formula funding, so it's not a competitive grant process. As long as you have apprentices and you have been supporting those apprentices for the previous calendar year, then you can submit for reimbursement for AIF dollars. The expectation is that the programs will submit for reimbursement annually. So as long as you have a registered apprenticeship programs and you do have apprentices and you've been supporting those apprentices throughout the year, then apprenticeship innovation funding may be an opportunity for you as well. But the one key that we do want to make sure that we're getting across in regards to AIF is that it is based off of a reimbursement model and formula funding. So this kind of opens up the door and it provides some great opportunities for individuals to be able to submit and continue to receive funding to help sustain their apprenticeship programs that they're currently supporting. Next slide, please. Okay. Submissions for reimbursement open once per year, considering active apprentices in the previous year. So I do have some dates there that are on those slides where you can go through the process to submit. And again, as I mentioned, all of this information that I'm communicating with you right now, you can also find on this website. It goes through the same processes to submit, as well as the submission criteria, as well as additional information. But this slide here just really gives you that understanding of what that process looks like and the dates and the months that are involved. So if you definitely want more information on this, definitely suggest that you reach out and be more than happy to assist in any way that I can. Go ahead, next slide. All right, so there's my contact information that you do see there on the screen. I am also going to go ahead and put that inside the chat there. So I'm really excited to be able to support the apprenticeship programs that are out there, as well as developing new and innovative apprenticeship programs within the education space. So really excited to meet a lot of individuals and see some familiar faces as well. So if there's any additional information that I could be able to provide, I'll definitely be able to help with that. And I did see a couple of questions, Kathleen. I know you mentioned that we'll be doing questions at the end. It looks like they're coming through. So I think I may have lost the one question that I saw come through while I was doing a presentation.
Yeah, I can ask you to clarify two things that I think we can do right now, and then I'll move on. One is AIF funding. Many of us know that it was for a specific period of time that it was approved. So maybe you could talk about what the activities are to extend that funding, because the current cycle, I believe, ends next year. And then do you know when the current announcement is going out about who was awarded AIF funding for this year?
Yeah, those are some great questions. And Kathleen, I appreciate you asking those questions a little bit earlier in the week as well. That is information that I do not have in my notes as of now, but I am gathering that information, and I'll be able to provide that directly to you, Kathleen, so you can be able to bring that out to the team. But the one thing I can say is that there is going to be an opportunity for additional AIF funding that's going to be available, but I want to be able to provide the exact information for that, and I don't want to speculate here on this particular call. But the good news is that there appears to be additional funding that's going to be available for that, as well as information on who has been awarded AIF funding in regards to 2024. So I will be gathering that information, and I'll be forwarding that to you as well.
Great. Thank you so much.
Fantastic.
And I'm collecting many of your questions. We'll have time. I think I've got them here, and John may be picking up a few too. So I've got 5 general questions for the panel. So as we move forward here, we have some time. And again, just a reminder, this does go till 12:30. So we did build in some time for questions. So thank you so much, Ryan, for your presentation. So I do want to just share that John mentioned that Foothill De Anza had a pretty significant award in our region, and I would say that they're I've just listed some Chabot Las Positas, Foothill De Anza. Foothill De Anza is actually number 3 in the state in terms of their awards for RSI. And so they're right here in our region. And I'm not going to say that Fong and Teresa and Chris are going to, be able to answer all your questions, but I would say, yes, look at their awards, and they most certainly have expertise in applying for RSI, and they are right behind Los Rios and Rancho Santiago in terms of their awards. So just so you see that 5 million in perspective in the state, they're at number 3, and they're right here in our region. And also Pleasanton Unified, I picked up number 6 in California at 4.8 million, and they're also in our region. So we can do some, maybe we need to drill down and have some of our RSI applicants on another Zoom at some point. And I think someone from Foothill De Anza is on this, so maybe you could contribute at a later point, but I would definitely lean into their expertise and be glad that they're in our region. And we also have model programs here. So Rancho Santiago was designated as a model apprenticeship Vision 2030 lead for apprenticeships. And so we have some colleges in our region that are taking part in that community of practice. So Chabot, Foothill, San Jose City, Las Positas, Marin, and Cañada are part of the model programs. And I'm also going to be attending those so I can bring back any good practices from our region. So just there's a lot going on in the apprenticeship space. And I think one of my jobs is to help coordinate that for our sector. So a lot of attention, but also lots of meetings and those kinds of things. As we enter our question period, I do have some questions that I've been saving up, and I do want to make, I do want to also share that we will be posting this PowerPoint, and it's got everyone's emails on it as well. And the recording will also be posted on our BACCC webpage. So if you have coworkers or partners that were not able to participate, we will have a recording. So the only 2 things additional I wanted to announce is that our bridge standards, which were mentioned, Justin mentioned them. We've been working on them for a year and a half almost. Launch is actually holding those standards now. They're EDU education standards tied to SOC codes in teacher aid and paraprofessional. And they were approved by both DOL and DAS last week. So we're very excited. And that does mean now that we have approved EDU standards, we will be welcoming other colleges to join. No need to start over again. And I'll be happy later on, maybe at the beginning of next year, to really focus on the bridge team and invite interested colleges to find out what this apprenticeship is that's going to be training future teachers, that leads to jobs in extended care, aftercare, teacher aide, paraprofessional, and other related positions, and how you can take part. So, for panelists, feel free to jump in. Those of you who are interested, we've had a number of questions here around coding, both SAM codes and coding, and how ensuring that these split sections or the sections are correctly coded so that RSI could be utilized. So does anyone want to?
Well, I kind of put that question in on the SAM Code A, and I was just asking because some colleges have done that. American River College did that many, many years ago for their building trades, because if you have a SAM Code A, it can be a closed section. More easily, a closed section is only eligible for, you can make it a prerequisite that you're a registered apprentice, if I remember right. And it was easier just for data collection. You could pull that out pretty quickly. So that's kind of why I brought that up and was wondering. Other colleges have decided not to do that, because you still have to tell me if I'm wrong. In the nowadays, you still have to go back through a run through academic senate to create the new section. But
okay, I think
on how you want to code it.
I think there was a question, whoever asked that question about not being able to access RSI because of the coding issue. Maybe you want to clarify? Come off mute.
Okay, I think that was me.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the SAM code is, what is the SAM code exactly? Just so I'm clear.
Student attendance manual. Maybe?
Yeah, Alice, that's the one when we can choose if it's apprenticeship or occupational or the top and the SAM.
And so because we've got apprentices in classes that are in the curriculum system, not marked as apprenticeship classes, we can't claim RSI for them. So I guess what you're saying is that we have to put new curriculum through that then is coded as apprentice curriculum, even though it's exactly the same class and with the same rubric?
I question if that's a correct answer, that you should be able to get RSI if they're not coded as apprenticeships, unless there's an internal problem. I don't know. I'm curious.
Well, the class.
Alice, drop me an email because I need to take a look. But I agree with John. I don't think it has to be. It definitely doesn't have to be a SAM-A to get apprenticeship funding. And I think that the issue is more of, are the students being tracked and tagged as apprentices, and whether or not the positive attendance hours are being tracked. So sometimes what we've run into is that a course that didn't normally have positive attendance tracking, the apprenticeship section does. So that could be the split as well. So if you want to hook up offline, I can run that down maybe and help you out.
Okay, thanks.
That'd be great. Thank you. Yeah, and it is the exact same course, so it seems more like a coding issue than a curriculum committee issue. But it is one of the challenges of this non-traditional apprenticeship, is because we do have GE courses, and that does add to the complications. So thank you for that question. And we have one from Frida Rossi about county offices with credential programs access these funds. And you mean credential program, that are part of a registered apprenticeship.
Right. So if we have a registered teacher apprenticeship and they're completing their credential through one of our programs, could we as a county office access these funds?
RSI funds? Good question.
Thank you.
Does anybody know?
Yeah, I think that would be a question that I could assist with. So currently, to access the RSI funding, it is required that the institutions be K-12 schools or California community colleges, but I'm happy to connect with you offline to see if there's any funding sources that you could leverage specifically for your county office of education.
Thank you.
Sabrina.
Yeah, and Frida, that's because
chat so I can reach out to you.
You'll have this PowerPoint as an attendee. So everyone's emails at the end.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
I here, let me show you. So,
Thank you.
And I think it's because, we were at that teacher residency apprenticeship meeting yesterday, wherever I was yesterday. And these are all advanced courses. They're not community college, they're 4-year or credential level. And that's why RSI is right now community college and K-12 only. So, but there could be other funding. So
thank you.
Okay, any other questions? I have a question about, let's see, where did I write it? No, I think we covered that. So any other questions for any of the panelists? We have about a few minutes. Does anyone want to come off mute?
Hi, Kathleen. Hi,
Hello.
Kathleen. I did see that John had a question in the chat. It says, as a high school, we're seeking to become a placement worksite for teachers' aid apprentices. Are AIF funds available to help pay the apprentices directly? And that's a great question. Apprenticeship Innovation Funding support dollars, as I mentioned, covers the cost of running an apprenticeship program, but those funds are not to be used as far as wages are concerned. So the short answer to the question, John, is going to be no, as far as are the AF funds available to help pay apprentices directly. Those support funds are definitely are to be used to help to support in running the actual program. So those funds are not available for payroll.
Thank you. But there are other sources perhaps for payroll, and we did look into a range of them depending on if your candidates were youth, involved in workforce investment funding, had certain indicators. So maybe the topic of another community of practice is funding payroll. Sabrina, you had an answer.
Yes, and I am sorry, I just wanted to retract, excuse me, I apologize. I did do some quick research regarding the County Office of Education question that was asked, and I did clarify that RSI funding is available to support these organizations as well. But again, if you need any assistance in setting up the program for your institution, by all means, please feel free to reach out.
Okay, great, thank you.
I already emailed you.
Yeah, she's right here. So you'll have the PowerPoint. I'm going to post it on our site. And you could just, here's the list here.
Thank you.
So thank you so much. So any final questions? Come off mute. You have a few more minutes, or we're going to say this has ended. Anyone else? Okay. Thank you so much to my illustrious panel. Thank you for all your expertise and your time. It's been great spending a Friday morning with all of you. This will be posted on our BACCC website, both the PowerPoint and the recording. And I think Michael's suggestion that you share it with people at your campus who might need the information or would benefit, that is a great suggestion. So thank you so much. And thank you to all of you who joined, who are developing new programs. This sector brings the women, and I think the last data point I looked at was we have about 9% of our apprentices in California are female, and we know what our classes look like, 85% female. So we have apprentices, we're going to bring the women on. So stay committed to your work. Good luck, and I will follow up on these topics that some of you mentioned for our next communities of practice. So thank you, panelists, all of you. Thank you, those of you who participated today.
Kathleen, can you put the website for the BACC in the chat, please?
Sure.
Thank you.
And I don't have it. Oh, I know where it is. Hang on.
Okay.
I got it. Sorry.
I was like, it's LinkedIn, but I can't get it from the picture. Yeah.
Yeah. It was way up here. Yeah. Oh well.
I think it's on the first slide or something.
Yeah, it might be way back here. There. So, oh, sorry, BACCC site. So it's a live link. So when you get this, it'll be right up here. And you can.
Okay, that was. All right, thank you.
Good to see you.
I just wasn't sure I could get to it if I have an address to the BACC site. So
yeah, you can just Google BACCC.org teacher preparation, and the site pop up.
That'll work. Thank you so much. Good to see you.
All right. Okay. All right. Thank you, everyone. Hi, Mandy. Hi, Mary.